Commissioner Saunders, and you're watching the Thanksgiving special of Fantasy Focus. Today I'm joined by our co-host,
Colin Meyer, the owner of the Wrath Quan franchise.
and we have a great show in store for you guys. We have the Power Rankings, Week 12 guests, Stat of the Week, playoff scenarios, and much more. But let's skip right to the highlight, or some would say the low point of last week. As many of you know, I didn't set my lineup last week. Quick story about that. So, obviously, I tried to taunt Steve after our Madden game by picking up Keith Marshall and starting Des Bryant as well. But I actually woke up that morning around 6 a.m. or so, and I couldn't fall back asleep. I was actually up until like 9 a.m. and I even opened the fantasy app, and I was like, you know what? I'll just set it like around 11 or something like that. You know, I don't want to make this lineup change while I'm tired. And as we all know, I woke up at 12:20. The game started at noon. Rest in peace. But anyway, let's skip right ahead to our power rankings here. At number one, we have a team who's been very familiar with me at the top of the power rankings, and that's It's a Lot of Lust. Steve Watts at 8-2-1. This team has just been dominant. He finally answered my criticism, saying that he has a low ceiling. He's exploded the last few weeks. He's going to be a Super Bowl contender, most likely. I think we should expect him to possibly clinch the number one seed after this week.
You know, with the starting lineup like Steve's, with guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, T.Y. Hilton, and then his three-headed monster of running backs of Chubb Gurley and Joe Mixon, it's a hard team to beat, so he earned this number one spot.
At number two, we have Wrath of Quan, who's sitting right next to me, Colin Meyer at 6-5. Despite being 6-5, and I believe you're the 5 seed?
Something like that.
Yeah. It's been a struggle. We all know that he's the highest in points against by almost 100 points, but nothing beats the two-headed monster of Saquon and
Melvin Gordon.
Melvin Gordon. Thank you. And then he has guys who chip in like Robert Woods, Josh Gordon, those guys. Cam's been solid for him at the quarterback position. This is just a solid team. He's also in contention for top scoring, so he's really making the best out of a pretty bad situation, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you know, you're right, Spencer. I don't want to talk about my team too much to piss off the fantasy gods there. Just want to make it clear I've averaged 136 points a game, and I've faced 133 points a game every single week. That said, we're going to hop right down to number 3 in our power rankings, which is the DeAndre Dick Riders, owned by Dylan Patel. You know, Dylan's been completely consistent this entire year. He has a 9-2 record, but he is number 3 in the power rankings. He has been kind of falling in the rankings since his number 1 spots he's had earlier in the year. You very well make us eat our own words with guys like Thielen and Hopkins producing every single week for him.
And I think a big piece for him that is going to propel him to the next level in this playoff push in the postseason is going to be James Conner, and whether or not he can continue to maintain his debatable RB1 status. He's really the difference maker, and he won that trade after Le'Veon decided to take a year off.
Alright, and after Dylan, we have Julian coming in at number 4 in the power rankings. His team's been red hot lately, with Tyreek Hill putting up points every single week. He just had a massive game. And Julian's the type of team where they wake up in the morning feeling dangerous, or not feeling dangerous, and they only put up 80. And that kind of up and down play will be either very, as I mentioned, dangerous in the playoffs, or it could be spelling his doom. What do you think, Spence?
It's just a typical Julian Serrano team. Boom or bust. And, that's the way he likes it. He's had success with it in the past, and I guess we'll have to see how this team stacks up with the teams he's had in the past. So, coming in at number 5, we have Bad Man with a Red Rifle and Jay Klopp at 5-6, and it has been a struggle down the stretch. He has lost 5 of his last 6, I believe.
He's 1-5 in his last 6 games.
Oh yeah, he's got guys like Aaron Rodgers and Odell, but that RB2 position has just been a hole. It's been a hole he's been trying to fill all season. So
Jake had a really good game against me last week, but it's definitely a tough outcome for him. Might have pushed him out of the playoff picture. He's going to need some things to really fall in his line, a few solar eclipses, and a few blue moons for him to get in the playoffs. But with that said, we're going to jump down to number 6 with an actual possible playoff team, with the Church of Wentz falling 3 spots in the power ranking after a pitiful 88-point performance on my roommate's part. Marco's team definitely has talent. They do produce with superstars like Zach Ertz and Kareem Hunt, but this week Kareem Hunt is on a bye, and it's a big test to see how Marco's team can perform without that Hunt crutch he has nearly every single week. But hey, he's proved us wrong all year. He's proved you wrong all year. He's let you know that, so we'll see if he can do it again.
And I mean, the storybook ending is set up in place. He plays me this week, the guy who's been harping on him all year. I guess we'll see if the stars align and he finally gets his last chance of redemption in what could be a game that is a must-win, that if he wins, he gets in. If he loses, he might miss out on the playoffs. So we'll just have to see how that all shakes out. Number 7, we have pretty awful draft, Nolan Flaherty at 6-5. And Nolan, it's been a pitiful last 2 weeks.
Awful last 2 weeks.
Pretty awful last 2 weeks, yes. He's had below 100 points the past 2 weeks, I believe. And honestly, I don't really know where it's coming from. Nolan was talking to me earlier before the show, and he was saying that he thinks that he hasn't been able to fill that RB2 spot because Chris Thompson has struggled as of late from coming back from injury. And the RB2 spot's just been a spot he's been trying to fill, and he still has Kamara, Antonio Brown, so it's kind of just, we don't know where this struggle is coming from.
Yeah, big names like Chris Thompson and Sony Michel are great options so he can actually be in your lineup and they're not hurt. Nolan's team has proven the old adage that the best ability is availability, and in his case, he hasn't had those guys. Going down to number 8, we have Scott Zacher, who has had a great late season push. Although he won't be making the playoffs, his team could definitely be a spoiler for keeping a team out of the playoffs. Hopefully not mine, even though I do play him this week. But he definitely has some consolation bracket potential to shake some things up with Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams and his 2 tight end thing he does sometimes, which is controversial that I don't really like either. But Greg Olsen and Kelsey chip in points every week too.
The other thing with Scott, I just want to say, I called it. I said a couple LM notes ago, I said if Scott gets Leonard Fournette back, he could be a threat, and he's shown that. He's had, in the last 3 weeks, he's had two 130-plus point games, and I mean, that just goes to show. Last week he's coming off of a 140-point win. He's dangerous, like Colin said. Leonard Fournette is really the difference maker on that team. At number 9, we have 2 girls, 1 cup. Tyler Patterson at 3-8. And I just don't know what to say about Ty. I've been waiting all season for him to have his breakout performance, and we've kind of seen the flashes here and there. He has a solid team. There's no denying that. It's just, I guess bye weeks, injuries, things just aren't kind of coming together for him.
Yeah, I totally agree. Ty's team is definitely one that kind of twists your tongue and you're at a loss for words. You're trying to describe it because he's had David Johnson the whole year. He is the RB10 ranked fantasy. I'm sure he didn't draft him expecting him to not be RB1 or 2, but his team just hasn't performed, and it's a bit of a puzzle. But speaking of not performing and confusing outcomes, we're going to jump down to number 10 in our power rankings. Our very own commissioner, Spencer Saunders. We all know with his riveting story he told at the beginning of this episode that he forgot to start his players, only putting up 50 points. Obviously, this was an awful decision. We all know it was an awful decision. We don't have to harp on it anymore. We're going to move on to number 11 in our power rankings. It's Jack Ponks. What do you think about Jack's team?
The thing with Jack, he's going to have A.J. Green back this week most likely, and that's going to be huge for him. Jax has this must-win scenario against Julian. He's going to need everything he can get here. However, with A.J. Green coming back, we'll have to see how that affects Tyler Boyd. Some people think that Tyler Boyd is going to get a boost. Some people think this downgrades Tyler Boyd. I'm not sure. I guess we're just going to have to find out. And this is going to be a big week for Jack and Julian. It'll be fun to follow this game.
Yeah, this is really a fascinating scenario. I mean, Jack's coming in at number 11 in the power rankings. He's really at the bottom of the barrel. And he's in playoff contention with guys like Josh Adams and Lamar Miller starting at running back, which...
Some way.
Yeah, if you're asking me, those are flex-worthy options, but they start on Jack's team.
Coming in at number 12, the last and final spot. Just like he's getting fucked in these power rankings, AJ Friend is fucked by the bell at 4-6-1. And the name says it all. The man's season has been such a roller coaster up and down. It was only fitting for it to end the way it has with Le'Veon sitting out the rest of the season.
Yeah, AJ's really had a tough season trying to make trades, be competitive, but really he's almost ruined his season. We've talked about it time and time again.
Oh my.
LM notes in the GM. So AJ's definitely had a tough season, coming in number 12 in the power rankings. Maybe he can pass Jack if Jack puts up an awful performance this week.
Coming up next, we have our Week 12 guests and much more. Stay tuned. For the final week of the regular season, we brought in one of my personal favorite guys who we interviewed this year. Ironically, he was also the first interview on the LO Notes, and he helped set the bar pretty high for the rest of you guys who came in on as guests this entire season. He's been to 2 Super Bowls, and he has 1 ring under his belt, while also being the third winning his team in league history. At 6-5 and currently the number 4 seed in the playoffs, it is our pleasure to welcome Nolan Flaherty. How you doing, Nolan?
Hey, I'm pretty good, man. Just mulling over the fact that I only have 1 ring because I thought I was going to have 2. Actually, in about, I think it was 2014, 2015, I was like...
2013.
2013.
First season. 2013,
the first year I masturbated, the 7th grade maybe, something like that. But I was supposed to have 2 rings, and I lost off a 2-point score correction. No, well, Jake actually had the 2-point home field advantage, and then he got a score correction where the Dolphins defense got him like another point or some shit, so I ended up losing. But other than that, I'm having a great day, having a great life, and I'm happy to be on the SFFL podcast.
It's a show. It's
Fantasy
a
Focus.
Fantasy Focus. I'm sorry.
Alright, well, thank you. After putting up less than 100 points in the last 2 weeks, you've fallen from the from contending for the number 1 seed to possibly and realistically taking home a 5 or 6 seed. How will you guys respond after 2 straight disappointments?
Well, it hasn't even been 2 straight disappointments. My guys have been fucking rattled for like 5 weeks now. I was 5-1, chilling out with the big dogs, with Dylan up at the top of the leaderboard. Never actually got to number 1 in the power rankings, which is pretty sad. But I've lost 4 out of the last 5 games, 2 of which were stupid fuck-ups by me. My magic ball told me that Marlon Mack was going to be good.
It was a little dusty.
He respects us all. He's a good kid. I've been so shitty the last 2 weeks.
Gotcha.
That's some astute analysis. And speaking of your team falling off lately, you made a blockbuster trade. Nolan here traded for Alvin Kamara with Antonio Brown and Patrick Mahomes already on his team. But with that trade, your team has still struggled. With all that said, what has Kamara meant to your team?
I think he was a guy that I targeted in the draft, but when Brown was there at 4, I said, well, I got to get Brown because he's just a stud. So, I was glad that I got Kamara just because he's just a stud. And as far as my team, I think he brings us up every week, especially the nose ring that he has. Our players are really motivated by that, and it's one of the key qualities, something that sets him apart from the other players on my team. And my players are really motivated by that, so it's definitely one of the keys.
You already kind of touched on this topic a little bit, but I want to hear a little more in-depth about it, I guess, and kind of what you're going to do to fix this issue. But the RB2 spot has been a weak spot in your lineup all year. And so, what are you going to do to address this issue?
Well, I'm hoping that Sony Michel will carry me the next couple weeks. He's playing the Jets and then Miami in a few weeks. So I'm hoping that maybe he'll be able to put like 15-point range, which would be fine for RB2 for me. And if not, I will have to rely on maybe Chris Thompson coming back in the next couple weeks for the playoffs, or LeGarrette Blount, who there's been years where he's been good, but he's been pretty shit of late. So I'm hoping not to have to pull that guy out of my ass, but if not, I could just end up picking up some random guy and hopefully that'll work. But hoping Sony Michel will fill that role as long as he's not influenced by Rex Burkhead, who's rumored to be coming back, and James White, who obviously gets a lot of touches in that offense. So
2 things. I saw a stat that said that LeGarrette Blount on his last 21 carries, guess how many yards he has?
Like 12 or some shit?
15.
Yeah.
Terrible.
That's pretty terrible.
And second thing, how do you think the Rex Burkhead coming back, how do you think that's going to affect Sony Michel's value?
I'm not exactly sure because I don't know how they're going to utilize him, because White has pretty much become the whole third down back. They don't really need Burkhead to do any pass catching role in the offense.
Okay.
So he could be a non-factor. The rumor is he doesn't even have a neck because it's injured. They had to actually surgically remove it. So we're going to have to see how that works in the offense. And obviously, I don't know how he even wears a helmet.
Honestly.
Yeah, those Patriot running backs are really tricky, and you never know if they're for sure thing. But one guy who has been for sure for your team is Patrick Mahomes, and you drafted him and Jimmy Garoppolo to start the season. But doing so, did you expect Mahomes to have this, firecracker of a season he's having?
I'd love to be the cocky guy that was like, "Oh yeah, I knew Mahomes was gonna be great. Yeah, I drafted him. He was a sleeper." Yeah, he was just kind of there. I actually thought Garoppolo was gonna be like a top quarterback, just because of the explosion that he had at the end of the year, where he was really clicking on all cylinders with Goodwin and the 49ers offense. So I drafted Garoppolo maybe around the 10th round or something, thinking that he'd be a good pick. I don't like to draft quarterbacks early. I don't think it's a good move in fantasy, really, because a lot of the quarterbacks can put up the same 20-point numbers week in, week out. So yeah, I just sort of picked up Mahomes because I saw he was there. I needed another quarterback, and it really worked out for me. So I'm glad that it has been good for me. Obviously, he's been the number one quarterback in fantasy.
That was a great draft choice.
Much like how Garoppolo went down for you early, how is the loss of O.J. Howard affecting your team, and really who's gonna step up on your team to fill that hole?
Well, yeah, it kind of sucks because I traded Eric Ebron for Dalvin Cook and someone else, and then flipped Dalvin Cook for Alshon Jeffrey. Yeah, I know I make a lot of trades, but I think Ebron's going to be phased out, so I'm not really mad about that trade because Howard stepped up. But now that Howard's out, I'm actually more mad that I didn't get a chance to get my hands on Cameron Brate. I should have put all my fantasy money on him. Julian put $4 on him, I only put $2. And he's obviously going to be stepping up. Tampa Bay has these shit quarterbacks, Winston and Fitzpatrick, and they just find whoever the hell's down the middle of the field and they just throw it to their tight end. So Bray would have been someone who's going to get a lot of targets coming up. Right now I'm starting Evan Ingram, and he's very shaky. He had a good year last year, but Eli Manning sucks. So I don't know. I might have to swing the waiver wire. I know the tight end position, some owners, especially Jack, have been struggling to fill that position all year. So it's going to be tough to get a good player down the stretch who will provide for me.
Yeah. Speaking of needing good players and your recent struggles, do you still view your team as a top Super Bowl contender as they were once thought of earlier in the season?
It's going to be interesting to see what my team does this week against Steve, even though he doesn't have Gurley. I did beat Steve earlier in the year. It was a really high-scoring affair. But I think it's going to be a good test going into the playoffs as to whether or not I can be a top dog. I think I have the potential to put up 130, 140 like I was doing earlier in the year. I'm averaging around 129 points per game, which isn't bad. But obviously recently it hasn't been there. As far as I think I can definitely contend. It's going to depend on who I get matched up with in the first round, though. If I end up playing you, I think I'm pretty fucked. But I think I have the potential to beat any of the other teams, whether it's Julian, Jack, Marco, or Julian, Jack, or Marco would be the other three teams. So yeah, any of those three teams I would feel pretty confident about beating, and then which would give me a good shot at Steve or Dylan in the next round. So
speaking of beatable teams in the playoffs, you're playing the number one ranked team in the power rankings this week is Steve Watts, and I mean this is a big game for you. Although according to Jake's playoff scenarios, a loss here would most likely would not knock you out. It would pretty much take some amazing everything going wrong here. Okay, catastrophe. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. So, what do you have to say about this game coming forward?
What I would love to happen ideally is that I win, Colin loses, Marco wins, and Jack wins. Because then I get a first round matchup against Jack.
Oh.
And that's what I would love. I'd be the 4 seed, he'd be the 6 I'd be the 3 seed, he'd be the 6 seed. Get a matchup there. I'd be the 3, I'd probably play Steve again. And I just proved if I win this week that I could beat Steve again. So it put me in a position to possibly make a deep run in the playoffs, as I think, especially Julian's team is dangerous. They beat me last week, but I know I could beat them, but at the same time, he does have the potential to have McCaffrey and Hill have big games week in and week out. Colin's team is really consistent, so I don't want to end up facing them. So, yeah, it's really important for seeding, so I really want to win this week so I can get to 7 wins, because I think there might be a lot of teams that are going to be at 6-6. It'll depend on tiebreakers. So.
Anything you'd like to say before we let you go?
Oh, yeah, the classic, anything you want to say. I think what I want you guys to know, so my team's going to make a comeback. And we're going to come out. We're going to beat Steve this week. I'm confident. He doesn't have Todd Gurley. We beat him with Todd Gurley. Okay? Evan Kamara, 30 points this week. Guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
And, yeah, I think it'll put us in a good position with the 3 or 4 seed where I won't have to face Colin first round. Get a matchup against either Julian, Marco, or Jack, which I would feel confident with, and I think we're gonna make it to at least the semifinals of the playoffs. So,
All right.
yeah,
I like the confidence. Thank you for coming in, Nolan.
thanks, sir.
Bold predictions from a bold man.
I love it. Hey, stick around, and he's gonna stick around too, because up next he's got the weekly awards. Stay tuned. This is Fantasy Focus.
Hey guys, I'm here for the Week 11 awards of the SFFL League. All right, so first up, we have the MVP. Got to give it to Tyreek Hill, 45 points. Julian was up 11 points going into the Monday Night Football game between the Rams and the Chiefs, and he was facing Patrick Mahomes, who I had, of course. Mahomes had a big night, 6 touchdowns, over 450 passing yards. But Tyreek Hill went absolute apeshit and carried Julian to the victory. Got to give him the MVP. Performance of the week. Scott Zacher. I mean, Scott posted his 3rd game in 4 weeks over 130 points this week en route to his 3rd win of the season. He is definitely a team that we should look out for as a possible dark horse consolation bracket run. Underdog of the week. You know what, there weren't really any underdogs this week again. Sort of the games went as expected. But just because his team is so shit and they won, I'm going to give it to Jack Ponks. Jack scored 99 points with the lineup consisting of Derrick Henry, Dante Moncrief, and whoever the fuck CJ Jiz Uzuma is. And I think that's a real accomplishment if you're going to ask me. So definitely one of the underdog stories of the season. That's a team that's so shit could actually put up the same amount of points as me, which really makes me feel bad about my team, and get a victory. Jack, you're on the right track here, though. You need one big game from Michael Thomas and AJ Green. You might be in the playoffs. Good luck to you. Donkey of the week, Spencer Saunders. Take Keith Marshall really fucked this hitter up, if you ask me. So he's going to have to be the donkey of the week. Didn't even set his lineup. Would have scored like 150. Instead, he's going to get roasted on Reddit. So that's going to be our donkey of the week. And thank you guys for listening to the Week 11 awards.
Hey, it's Dylan Patel, your SFFL statistician. This week for you, we got some mid-season draft grades. What I did for you guys this week, I took your Week 1 rosters, looked at who you drafted, your position rankings for the guys that you drafted. Then I found the average of those rankings. I took them in order and compared them to the standings in SFFL this week. So in terms of the numbers here, we have Steve as the best drafted team. His average position ranking was 24. So to put that in retrospect, basically, if you calculated the average of all his rankings from week 1 of the guys that he drafted, he typically has the 24th best player at that position, which is actually very high. Some of the guys that he has on his roster, Andrew Luck is 7th, Joe Mixon, Todd Gurley, 15th and 1st, respectively. You also have Big Ben, so he's got quarterback depth, and Will Lutz, his team is named after him. He's the first kicker in that spot. At the very bottom, we have Spencer Saunders, average of 52 in the position rankings. That is very low. The next closest is AJ at 43, so you can just see the difference there. But there are some outliers. He drafted Des Bryant, got a lot of heat for that. Take a look at Ted Ginn Jr., also Rashad Matthews, all above 105th in their respective positions. But we found the correlation between, obviously, if you drafted well and had lower average rankings. We got Steve, Colin, Ty actually ended up with 3rd best rating, and then Dylan's team and Julian's team. 4 out of those top 5 are all seeded within the top 5 of SFL rankings as well. So just goes to show that you draft good teams, you keep those players that are structured for your success, and then you'll end up doing well in the regular season. And then also some updates from this week's trade tracker, ones to keep in mind for the rest of the year. In terms of the winning bracket right now, we have the trade between Colin and Dylan with Josh Gordon and Philip Lindsay, both exclusive role players coming down into the final season. Very crucial, critical players in terms of who's going to keep the edge in points for. You have Josh Gordon with 85 points since he was traded, and Philip Lindsay actually with 113. So right now Dylan's winning that trade by 28. Also in the constellation area, we have the trade between Scott and Spencer, Travis Kelce for David Njoku and Brandon Cooks. This is actually a very close trade right now. Travis Kelce is 99 for Scott ever since he's gotten him. And then Njoku and Brandon Cooks have combined for 26 and 93 respectively. So Spencer is currently winning that trade, a 2-for-1, so he's probably going to have that edge, but it's only by 20 points. And just want to keep in mind as the season wears down.
We're going to get into the final segment for our episode of Fantasy Focus today, which is the matchup analysis. First matchup we're going to be analyzing here is the bad man with the red rifle. It's going up against the DeAndre Dick Riders. And playoff implications for this game are pretty low, but it's a game that Jake needs to win if he wants to mathematically stay in the playoff competition. And with Aaron Rodgers on his team and the rest of Odell Beckham and Stephon Diggs, some of the star players he has a chance to maybe pull off an upset against Dylan. But Dylan's consistency throughout the year, now that he's got James Conner and Philip Lindsay on his team, I expect Dylan to walk away with a win this time.
Next up, we have a battle of the bums. Fucked by the Bell, AJ Friend against 2 Girls 1 Cup, Tyler Patterson. AJ has his typical Tariq Cohen, Dalvin Cook, Julio Jones, Deshaun Jackson going for him. And that group, as we've seen as of late, has not really been producing. Whereas Ty, he's been up and down all year, like we talked about earlier in the show. David Johnson has a matchup against the Chargers. Mark Ingram has one up against Kansas City, which he should be able to exploit big time. Evans and Sanders both have pretty favorable matchups. At the end of the day, AJ just flat out has not been scoring. Ty has been not scoring as well, but not as bad as AJ. So just like you'd expect in a battle of the bums, this one's going to be really low scoring, but Ty just isn't as bad as AJ. That's as simple as that.
Matchup we have next is against 2 of the powerhouses in this league, or at least one of them, with Steve going against Nolan. Big thing about Steve's team this week is Todd Gurley is actually on a bye, the player who's been the lifeline for Steve's team and has led his explosive week the last few weeks. Nolan's hand, he's getting Sony Michel back, hopefully from injury, which will shore up his RB2 spot, which has definitely been a sore area for him all season. But with that said, I actually still expect a win from Steve. His team has proven to be very consistent. He still has other strong players like T.Y. Hilton, Juju Smith-Schuster, Joe Mixon, who has relatively favorable matchup against Cleveland. So I expect Steve's fantasy prowess and his consistent team to actually pull out the win here and maybe make Nolan sweat a little bit in the playoff race.
Good teams always find a way to win those big games. Speaking of another big game, man next to me, Colin Meyer, takes on Scott, who he's been hot. He's been hot as of late. Leonard Fournette has a game against Buffalo, and the Buffalo defense their rush defense at least, is a little underrated. It's been solid all year. Aaron Jones takes on Minnesota, meaning Devontae Adams also plays Minnesota. Scott's being bold. He's playing DJ Moore, who he just picked up off of waivers for $2. Moore takes on Seattle. He's also got Greg Olsen, and Matt Breida's back and he's healthy, and that'll be an X factor to look out for in this game. We all know Colin's team. He's got Saquon, Cam, Melvin Gordon. We can expect probably around 60 points combined from those three. But what really gets interesting is Josh Gordon plays the Jets, which he and a lot of in the fantasy community, he's pretty loved in this matchup because Jets defense is terrible. Josh Gordon's a big boom player. He should really look to really exploit this matchup. Colin's putting Larry Fitzgerald back out there. Fitz after dropping him earlier in the season, kind of playing around with him, starting him, not starting him. He's going bold, and this big game for him. This game, really, a loss for him doesn't knock him out of the playoffs, but this is purely for seeding. He needs to win this game.
Just want to give a quick message to Larry. If you're watching this, Larry, we've had a rough season. I know I dropped you, but I took you right back home. No one else touched you. You knew you belonged with me. And you did catch 2 touchdowns last week, but that was on 2 catches. So I'm going to need a little bit more than that from you this week. I know you've got it in you, old man. Larry, I need a good game this week. Back to you, Spence.
Well said. For what I think about this matchup, Scott, there's no doubting he's been playing well, but we know what Colin can do. I don't think Scott's going to be able to keep up with scoring with Colin this week. Colin just has better star power. Colin's going to get the win here.
All right, next up, our interesting matchup here between our commissioner, Spencer Saunders, and Church of Wentz. Some breaking news here. Spencer recently changed his team name to Goodwin against Marco.
See what I did there?
Yep.
Picked up Marquise Goodwin.
As you just mentioned, the Marquise Goodwin pickup was Marco's kind of his puppet player all year. He paraded him around like he was any good, but
He's going to beat your ass, too.
We all knew he was trash. Marco's obviously got a big problem this week. Kareem Hunt is on a bye. Kareem Hunt has borderline carried his team. Sometimes Zach Ertz has done that. Zach Ertz does have a favorable matchup against the Giants, but I doubt he's going to score 40 again. With that said, I predict a win out of Spencer this week simply because his team is consistent. He does have good players, and I think the Kareem Hunt loss for Marco, which he's starting Doug Martin and Gus Edwards, and I don't think any NFL coach would want them to be their starting running back, let alone fantasy.
The dude's name is Gus. Like, come on, man.
He's Gus. Gus Edwards. Just because you have Gus Edwards, you're going to lose Marco. I'm sorry. See you in Champaign next week. Spencer wins this matchup. Marco's playoff position will be in doubt.
Alrighty. Last but not least, we have the game of the week. The men of the hour. Teed with Tyreek takes on #can't guard Mike. Julian is without Tyreek Hill, the man who is the cover of his team name. He's got Tyler Boyd with AJ Green coming back. We're gonna have to see how Tyler Boyd responds to this. If his value goes up, if he goes down, we're gonna have to keep a close eye on that. Julian's starting Theo Riddick. I think this is actually a good play. It's a better play than LeGarrette Blount because I think Chicago is going to beat the shit out of the Lions on Thanksgiving. So Riddick should get a lot of work in the passing game. McCaffrey, he's just been the solid top 10 running back he's been all year. He plays Seattle. We should expect a healthy 20 points or 15 to 25 points from him. He's also got Julian Edelman going, who, much like Josh Gordon, is playing the Jets. And this should be a matchup that's favorable for anybody playing for the Patriots, honestly. Julian, his recent pickup, spent $4 on Cameron Brate, who he's starting at tight end, which should be... I'm not sure how I feel about Cameron Brate. He definitely was a fantasy relevant player a couple years back, but there's a reason why he was second fiddle to O.J. Howard. So we'll have to see how, especially with Jameis Winston going back under center, we'll have to see how that affects this high-powered Buccaneers offense. Allen Robinson is Julian's flex. Robinson will be playing, going up against the Lions, and it'll be interesting to see if Darius Slay is going to be shadowing Allen Robinson this game. However, Julian has enough points to cover up for what could possibly be a bust from Robinson going forward. Another important phase of this matchup that needs to be mentioned is the Bears' defense. The Bears' defense just is absolutely nuts. Amazing. You could tell he's repping the Mac jersey over here. I'm over here with the Trent Richardson jersey. My team's terrible. But yeah, the Bears' defense should have a great outing against Detroit, who's going to be without Kerryon Johnson and Marvin Jones. Mediocre Marvin, as he's been donned in this league. So now I'm going to hand it off to Colin for the analysis on Jack's team.
I think Jack's team, and this matchup specifically, and the roster he's putting out this year, is the most fascinating lineup that I have seen all season. Jack's team, once starting with players like Drew Brees, who's been on fire, Alvin Kamara, and Michael Thomas. Those Saints carried his team, and we've fallen to Lamar Jackson and
Lamar Miller.
Lamar Jackson and Josh Adams. Someone once said that Josh Adams was fantasy relevant. Everyone disagreed with him. I don't know who that was. But with that said, point is, he's starting Lamar Jackson, who recently just got the starting job. We don't even know if he's going to start over Flacco because his hip is questionable. He's starting Lamar Miller, the perfect example of what a Domino's pizza is in fantasy. You know exactly what you're getting, but it's never better than just okay. Josh Adams, borderline a joke, Pretty sure he picked him up off waivers this week. But obviously, total boomer bust play. He is playing the Giants. Michael Thomas, the main mainstay on Jack's team here, kind of carries him every week, carries him to solid 80 to 100 points, which isn't much, but it's what Jack does week to week. The biggest X factor here is undoubtedly AJ Green. This was the trade piece Jack wanted when he originally traded away Alvin Kamara, but Green has been plagued with injury. And with Green questionable this week, a duo of Michael Thomas and AJ Green is one of the strongest in the SFFL. Maybe that will be enough to push Jack over the win. Additionally, to help Jack win, he's finally found a tight end in Vance McDonald. Jack has been without a tight end all season due to injuries to guys like Delaney Walker. I picked up Austin Hooper when Jack needed a tight end. Shout out to that. But Vance McDonald will hopefully be able to push Jack over the edge in this matchup. Finally, he's starting Willie Snead. This is a typical Jack start. Some random bum on an awful team with an awful quarterback who Jack thinks is going to do well. But hey, what do I know? Willie Snead may have a good week. With that said, Jack's lineup is very interesting. He has the Lamar Jackson and Willie Snead connection. He's got the Josh Adams running back for the Eagles, who are doing very poorly recently. AJ Green's coming back. So with all that said, again, with Julian being without Tyreek, who do you think is going to win this matchup?
It's a tough one. I think the big story here is AJ Green going up against Tyler Boyd. Honestly, with that Bengals offense and how low-powered it is, sorry Jake, only one of the two I can see having a good game, in all honesty. So I honestly don't know if AJ Green is going to be fully healthy. I don't know if Tyler Boyd is finally going to have a good week. But I'm going to have to go with Julian. He just has the better players at the end of the day. Jack's team has just been mediocre all year, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jack pulls some more bullshit out of his ass like he has for the last 4 years.
Yes. I actually, unfortunately, have to agree. I know Jack's the story that maybe a lot of us want to pull this one right out of his rectum and squeeze into the playoffs, but I just don't see it happening. I mean, Julian has the playoff experience. He has proven it year after year. He can be a competitive team, and even in an off year like this, he's proven it down the stretch. So I'm sorry, Jack, but the Cinderella story is coming to an end. Julian's going to win this matchup.
And last but not least, we're going to wrap this thing up. Stay tuned for the final last message we have for you guys in this episode of Fantasy Focus. Wow, that was a lot of fun. I just got to say, big shout out to Colin. He's behind the camera right now, but the guy puts in so much work for these videos. He is honestly the brains and the whole everything, the mastermind behind SFFL Productions and Fantasy Focus and everything. We've been planning to do this for probably a month or two now. Like, we've really been excited to do this. This has been in the works for a long time. I also want to say thank you to Jake, Dylan, and Nolan. You guys were great. It's a lot of fun doing this. Hopefully we'll have a lot more of stuff like this for you guys in the future. One last thing, a little food for thought for you guys to end this whole Thanksgiving special of our episode of Fantasy Focus. There's been a recent stir up about the whole Constitution, all that type of stuff. So, like I said, I want to hold a constitutional convention. Everybody can come. I'll have it at my house at some time before we all go back to school for Thanksgiving break, or after Thanksgiving break. But we'll all have a chance to revise, amend all the rules, make sure everything is clear and clarified, because in some ways I felt like it was kind of just up in the air, the whole ruling about the last place, or not the last place, the highest and lowest scoring. And I like when things are strict to the book and the way it is. So we're going to have to clear that up, but I'm really looking forward to it. You guys will all have your opportunity to sign the Constitution, give your input and all that type of stuff. No, Marco, we are not buying a scroll. That would be the most head-ass thing. Like, listen, we have a trophy, we do all this stuff, but we are not buying a scroll and a feather pen, okay? That is whack, that is crossing the line, okay? But we will all hopefully be present for this Constitutional Convention, and we'll iron out all the details. As usual, go vote on the Weekly LM poll, even though we're doing a video this week. The LM poll will still be there. This week, the poll will be about who was your favorite guest, since everybody has gone, which I think will be a fun poll. And we have a big, exciting week ahead of us. So good luck to everybody heading into Week 12 and heading into the postseason. It's been a lot of fun. I love being your guys' commissioner. I hope you guys love the league. I put a lot of work into making sure everybody has a great, fun time here. And it's been a great season so far. Let's finish this one off strong. Thank you for watching this Thanksgiving episode of Fantasy Focus. I'm Spencer Saunders.